This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily Bloomberg iHeart podcast. And I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, managing editor of crypto for Bloomberg News. It's Monday, September 19th. Today we'll explore a sector of the crypto universe that's booming. Companies that specialize in finding vulnerabilities in software and code are flourishing. Why? Because crypto hacks and frauds are themselves booming, with some estimates as high as $2 billion in losses stemming from these kinds of attacks. So the people who know how to stop hacks from happening, who have specialist knowledge and understanding and expertise, they're really raking in the cash right now. Bloomberg reporter Olga Kharif.
Somebody is going through the code line by line, essentially checking for any bugs.
And senior editor Anna Irrera.
So you have then white hackers, which are the good guys who are trying to hack your project and obviously not steal the money, but just to prove that there is a problem.
Join me now for more about these crypto sleuths. It's always such a pleasure to do these episodes because I feel like, we've got like 3 different time zones happening at the same time and folks all around the world, which is, I think, an appropriate entry point for this episode because it covers or will cover crypto sleuths who are operating from all different corners of countries and cities to try to stop hacks and scams and other bad things from happening. Olga, what was the origin of this story? Like, how did you kind of come across these folks and why are they gaining in popularity right now?
Actually, it was Anna's idea.
There we go.
It might be a better question for her.
Anna, I love when editors are coming up with stories.
Yeah, so thank you, Olga. You could have just run with it. It would have been fine. So I was actually interviewing, it was like maybe my first week here, and I was speaking to someone who just raised money for their new DeFi protocol, and I asked what they were going to spend the money for, and he said, security, it's been so expensive, and it's one of the people we quote. So the founder of Morpho Labs, who said they spend so much money, who told me in a Telegram message with many O's.
Yeah, that is the actual quote in the story. It's like S-O for like a while, for emphasis.
Yeah, so, he brought it up. And so I thought that's really interesting. And he brought up the idea of auditors. And I just found it was fascinating, that you need to have your code audited, especially so now with so many hacks. And he brought up, how there are different firms, different levels of quality, but that it is important to spend a lot of money. And I think he mentioned how much they'd spent in one. And I thought, whoa, that's a lot of money to spend, especially if you're in a bear market and you might have less money.
So, Olga, why does crypto need auditors?
It's such an interesting situation in the crypto market where billions are invested into a slew of different apps. And in a lot of cases, these apps are not well protected at all. So billions is being lost. And that, I think, is getting fixed now. And that's why all of the security firms that Anna and I talked to are benefiting because the industry is waking up to the need for greater security protections.
One of the biggest crypto heists to date, hackers stole about $600 million from a blockchain system connected to the popular Axie Infinity online game.
And it's the Ronin bridge, the blockchain that supports Axie Infinity, says was hacked. The attack, many say, has shown what vulnerability these bridges provide because they're rife with problems. The computer code, for instance, on the bridges is not audited, and that's what security experts say creates vulnerabilities.
For years, probably since Bitcoin was invented, there have been people who've been finding exploits and code vulnerabilities. What about 2022 has meant that this much money is surging into these companies now?
The size of the hacks is becoming just amazingly large. So earlier this year, for instance, one of the bridge lost more than $600 million in a hack. And then somebody has to put this money back to give it to users, hopefully. And what we found out as a result of a lot of these bridge hacks is that there are very sort of serious backers of these bridges. There are large financial companies that are now having to cough up these funds, and they are the ones waking up to the need for greater security. And they're the ones footing the bills for these losses. I think that's why the industry is starting to spend this money on security.
So when you talk about those sorts of, well-capitalized, well-funded traditional investors, an example is when Jump Crypto had to bail out Wormhole, the bridge that lost, more than $300 million. I'm sure it was a kind of a good sign of confidence to the overall Wormhole ecosystem and really said something about Jump's willingness to, support their portfolio companies, but a very expensive headache, certainly. Why has it taken crypto so long, other than the financial incentives that you've described, to adopt this kind of philosophy shift?
The crypto industry has essentially grown up with, its roots are, a bunch of developers getting together in chat rooms and throwing some code together, seeing how it works. It's a very sort of democratic grassroots structure. Mm-hmm. And it's this structure that essentially has impeded the industry from implementing some of the basic measures that any sort of company implements automatically. The security measures that are being implemented, they can run from something basic such as, somebody is going through the code line by line, essentially checking for any bugs. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, what a lot of the security companies are doing, they're also deploying software bots that essentially monitor what's happening in the app and alerting the team working on the app that say they got hacked. Because what we saw earlier this year was that, sometimes days would pass and the app developers don't even know that the app got hacked. So we are talking about some very, very basic steps that are now increasingly being taken.
One aspect I think, and it might be a skeptic in me, but part of it is also maybe because it's distributed, who's going to get in trouble if something goes wrong. So if no one's responsible, like no person, no entity necessarily, then you might have less of an incentive because, if something goes wrong, well, oops, sorry. And also initially, the sums at risk weren't that big. Whereas now, and especially because some of these hacks happen during a rally, everything gets multiplied by like 50%, like it's 50% higher. So, a hack now might be a lot less loss than it would have been 6 months ago. So I think it's like as the industry matures and more mature players step in, you have some of the requirements, or at least, the investors that are coming in will expect some of the same standards they're used to in other sectors. Because, for example, you mentioned banks, right? Like if a bank gets hacked, even if it's just their website or something's down for 3 seconds, imagine you aren't able to access your bank account for 5 minutes. That's a huge deal, and regulators will step in, or at least they'll want to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. There'll be like politicians talking about it, because obviously you expect to be able to access your money. Whereas here, I think the threshold and the standards have been lower, but slowly people are realizing that, I need to be able to access, it's my money, and having low standard for it is not okay.
Is there something cultural about this attitude of, well, we're only going to take this seriously when, billions of dollars are at play, and we're going to have to hire in outside people rather than this being something we can sort of solve as a community?
I think crypto is also a bit individualistic in my experience. I don't know if maybe I'm doing it a disservice, but I feel like there's a lot over the years with all the crashes that I've sort of covered. There's a lot of like, well, they lost their money, whatever. Like nobody ever seems to be sad for people who've lost the money. It's like you weren't smart enough because you kept it on an exchange. Mm-hmm. You weren't smart enough because you should have known. Like there's very much this sense of like, it's like the Wild West still.
It's like
in the mentality, you should protect yourself. Like very much a pioneer mentality. Like if you lose your money, then it's your fault. So I think maybe there's more thinking about sort of the collective right now. Like of an actual community, whereas before it's like it's been sort of, well, he lost like 2 million, whatever. He should have known to keep it under his bed.
Up next, more from Bloomberg reporter Olga Kharif and from Bloomberg senior editor Anna Irrera on the growth of crypto security companies. We'll be right back. There is a degree of seriousness associated with, I'm locked out of my money. It's not like Twitter's down, disaster, a bunch of journalists are freaking out about it. It's like you suddenly do not have access to your money. And I've always been struck by not just the individuality that you describe, Anna, but also like the casualness, right? Where people will be like, well, stuff in crypto is not going to work. Sometimes it's going to go down, buyer beware, that kind of thing. But as the sums involved have gotten bigger and bigger, that's not something that an individual, whether you're dealing with a few $100s worth of tokens or several thousand or more, depending on their individual wealth, like that's not an argument that they're impressed by. I'm thinking about, like the Voyager and the Celsius withdrawal freezes, and how initially a lot of the response to that was, people should have known better than to put their money in crypto. Like, what can you expect? You should accept this risk. And there's this kind of like cavalierness about it as well, to your point about, the pioneer. So what I wonder for y'all is, when you talk to these security experts, when you talk to these folks that are being brought in to a culture that has not necessarily been welcoming of them before, how are they finding it, right? Are they finding it that people are going to listen to them? Are they taking their code reviews seriously? Are they taking their advice seriously? Or is it more of an uphill battle?
I think just the amount that they're getting paid. Like, we also had an example of bug bounties, right? Like, which is a bit different, is when a project says we'll pay I don't remember, I think it was like 6 million or something less or higher, that they were going to pay to someone who would find a bug, like, openly. So you have then white hackers, which are the good guys who are trying to hack your project and obviously not steal the money, but just to prove that there is a problem. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that they're getting paid that much means that, they are serious about it and more serious about it than before.
There was a recent example just in August of a company that provides like advice to NFT, folks making NFT projects about how they should structure their mints. They're called Rugpull Finder, and they look at different kinds of frauds. And they did a mint and got exploited in like no time flat. There was a technical exploit in the code, and folks were like, how did this happen? Y'all are supposed to be experts. And they conceded that they did not, in fact, audit the code themselves or use a third party. Now, first of all, dramatic irony. Second of all, it does seem like even people who are preaching, the benefits of like take more steps, be more thoughtful, are not themselves always following this advice. What is it really going to take for these kinds of services to be, one, kind of brought in-house, but two, just like listened to, whether they're in-house or third party?
Regulators. I think it's a standard answer. Like, one of the few things I remember from my many years to get a law degree is that no one does anything unless they're forced to by enforcement, or like you get punished for doing it. Like, you're not going to do something that's not in your best economic interest unless, you have to, because it's not something you'll do out of the goodness of your heart. Again, maybe that's a skeptic in me, but I feel like once regulators will be like, okay, so you big fund want to put money in this project. What is its security? Mm-hmm. What are what's happening with the custody? Where are the keys? Who's audited the code and all that? Until that happens, then, you can sort of make it secure because you care about it, but maybe there'll still be shortcuts you might take at one point or another.
Thank you, Olga, and thank you, Anna. You can find more of Olga and Anna's reporting on the Bloomberg terminal, on Bloomberg.com, or follow them on Twitter. Olga is at Olga Kharif, that's OlgaKharif, and Anna is at Anna Irrera, that's AnnaIrrera. On the next episode of Bloomberg Crypto, crypto miners who set up shop in Sweden and Norway are finding that they are needing to move even further north into the Arctic. Soaring power prices in Europe as a result of drought, political considerations like Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and generally rising inflation have meant that that combination of abundant energy that's also low cost is getting harder and harder to find. This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio. For more shows from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Send us your comments, questions, or suggestions for the show to crypto@bloomberg.net, or find us on Twitter, we're @crypto. The supervising producer of Bloomberg Crypto is Vicky Vergolina. Our senior producer is Janet Babin. Our producer is Mohammed Farouk. Associate producer is Moses Andam. Desta Wonderad is our engineer. Original music by Leo Sidran. I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael. We'll be back tomorrow.